No, I know that, but it's...
All right, my name is Mark Cunning. I'm here to talk to you about PowerMap and its storytelling capability. So thank you for coming today. Have you guys used PowerMap before? Show of hands. All right, we got a couple people here. So good. So we'll do a very introductory session. So just as a reminder, if you haven't already, gone downstairs, throw your name into the raffle, and you get a chance to win a GoPro camera. I have one myself, and it's pretty awesome. So today, we'll talk about who I am, what PowerMap is, why you should use PowerMap, who should use PowerMap, and we'll do a hands-on demo. I'll show you, build a couple stories, and do some question and answers at the end of that. So who am I? So I'm an information management and analytics consultant at Salon Consulting. I've been doing this for 7+ years. I'm an active blogger, Twitter, and a Dun & Bradstreet MVP. Now, what is PowerMap? So PowerMap is a 3D geospatial visualization tool that you can use to build stories, find and explore data, and use it to tell a very compelling story to somebody that may not know your data set. So go in, find a piece of data that you want to explore, find something interesting, build a story, share it, explore, and so forth. So the version that we're going to be working with is the Microsoft Preview build. It came out in September. It was released to the general public as a Office 365 version. So if you have Office 365 Pro, you can get it, but we'll work with the preview version since most people don't have Office 365. Why should you use PowerMap? So as you know, data sets are getting larger every day with so many different devices that capture data. So think RFIDs, just checking codes, just anything within SQL, tons of data every day, going to the gigabytes, terabytes, petabytes. So that's more of the big data scale. We'll talk about more medium data today. So stuff that you can work with Excel, so within the millions of rows of data. Of course, there are other tools that you can use to do these kinds of things, to do geospatial visualizations, but they cost more money. As you know, Microsoft tools are free and they have a low barrier of entry. They're easy to learn, and there's a whole lot of people in the market. Do you have a question?
No, sorry. I was just
scratching yourself?
Yeah.
So like I said, there are other tools like ArcGIS, Visual Fusion that can do very similar things, sometimes better things, but there's a learning curve and there's a price point that you need to do to get into them. So who should be using PowerMap? Like I mentioned before, PowerMap is a discovery and storytelling tool, and the two kinds of people that really will most benefit from it are the information worker and the decision maker. So the information worker will be the person who actually authors the visual data. They will go through, find the data that you want, explore and figure out, analyze, provide the insights, and then the decision maker will personalize that information to something compelling and go and tell that story to a group of people. So executive board of directors or your boss or whomever that is. In this case, I'll be wearing both hats, so I'll build and I'll help you tell the story. So if you've used PowerMap, which many of you haven't, it's gone through a few iterations. There have been quite a bit of improvements, so you can now visualize by region. You can export your findings into a nice little video, add some music to it, change colors, do a flat map, and add pictures to your annotations. So enough of me just talking some slides. Let's jump in and actually do a demo. So the first piece of data that we'll look at, and you should be able to find this data yourself as well, is a power stations map. So we'll look at data here by state, county, which company it is, what's their plant name, their capacity in megawatts, their source code, which isn't too important for us right now, their initial date of operation, so when they came into being, and what kind of energy source are they. So are they a water source, are they natural gas, so forth. So once you go ahead and download PowerMap, it'll show up for you within the Insert tab over here. So you'll have Map. You want to click within your data set here and hit Map and launch PowerMap. The first screen that you'll see here is if you have any stored what they call tours or stories, they'll show up here. But what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create a new tour. So what happens here, and it's loaded on the other screen, so let me move it for you. So this opens up a separate window. This is PowerMap. And the first thing that it does is it tries to figure out how are you going to geocode your information. So it takes your data points and it does a guess and says, okay, you have a county and a state. Those are two things that we can geocode by, and what that means is take that object, go to Bing services, so you have to be connected to the internet. That's one of the key things, and it'll return a lat long or a shape for each of these data points. And if you guys have any questions, just feel free to interrupt and we'll answer those questions. So
does it have a, like you said, shape? Does it have like zip code information in there too, shapes? Or?
Yes, it goes down to the zip code for the shape. So it does zip codes, I think counties, states, and countries. So here we're going to choose to geocode this section by county. We're going to hit next. And since I've already done it before, it does it pretty quickly. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to first name this layer. So right now I only have one layer to choose from. So I'm going to say this is a county. And what do I want to show on the map? So right now it's showing all the points that are on the map. And here are my different columns that come out of my data set. And I want to first show capacity. So capacity in megawatts, I select that, and it will automatically throw it into the height here. It will start off by automatically throwing in a legend here as a descriptor. And as you can see here, we have a nice fluid interactive map. You can zoom in, pan this however you like. And you have various chart types to choose from. So the default is obviously column, but you have a bubble. So what that bubble does is it just, based on the size, it draws a circle out. But it's kind of hard to tell with a bunch of points that are overlapping, and it's not very intuitive. So one of my favorites is the heat map. So you can see it aggregates the points into a nice colorful region here. So you can see here, you can zoom in, and as you zoom in, it changes the aggregation value. But let's zoom back out to what we were looking at the US. And another option was region. So you can see here it's drawing in the individual counties that we had selected. But in this case, let's stick to our column chart. And so we're showing capacity. And as I said, the main piece around PowerMap is the storytelling piece. So here we want to build a tour. So we'll call this capacity. Capacity in the US. So this is the name of my entire tour. So as I'm building this, I can capture various scenes, and then we can later play back the story that we've built. So I like what I'm looking at here. I'm going to capture this scene. That does the screen capture. I'm going to do add a scene, and what that does is in memory, it remembers the state that you're at here. So it remembers what you're looking at, how your data looked, and you can go back to it, play with it, explore with it some more. So we're looking here at general capacity. Let's go ahead in this second view. Let's also add the type of energy that it was. So we're going to use the energy description. And you can see here the map automatically changes, and you can see we have a lot of different colors showing. They may not be completely obvious what they are. So we can click Add Legend, and it'll draw us a nice legend, and you'll see that there are a lot of values here. So you have to understand, it'll take whatever data you have in your Excel sheet and show it to you. So if there's something you don't like about your data, go back into Excel, change it up, clean it up, and hit refresh, and it'll automatically update. So just be cognizant of what you're building here. So you may not want to have all 20 or 30 of these categories. You may want to have 5 or so categories, just so it's a little more clear to the story that you're building. But in this case, we'll leave that here. And let's go ahead and let's add a annotation to this map. So we're going to add a text box, and here we'll just say energy by category, because that's what we're looking at. So you can add 2 pieces of text, you can add a title, a description, you can format this however you like, so you can change the colors. It's pretty good for the number of options you can get from a formatting perspective. And apologize, I am on a resolution that is a little low, so it is a little scrunched together. So go ahead and I will add that scene. And so I can just flip back and forth between the 2 different things that I've done. So I have one scene here, another scene here. Now the cool thing is when you jump between scenes, you can create a transition effect. So if you click on this little settings icon, if you want, you could give the scene a name if you want. So I'll just add category here as the scene name. How long you want the scene to last. So in this case, we'll just keep it at 6 seconds. How long do you want the transition to last? And you have various types of transition effects. So station, it's very stationary, it just doesn't do anything. Circle will do that. It goes around in a nice little circle, and you have some other ones that you can play with as well. And how fast you want this to work. So let's just do that. And let's move on to the next piece. So the next thing I'd like to look at is, let's see how the Pacific Northwest looks. So let's zoom in here, and let's maybe even change how this map looks. So we have themes here, and I'm okay with the default theme, but I like this black on black one. It pops a little more. So we see here Pacific Northwest. You can click on these objects, and you can see they have a lot of hydropower, a lot of water power. They like to be green up there. So you can start to tell a bit of a story, how people like to use their energy. So let's change this, and we'll call this Pacific Northwest. And if we want, we can get rid of this, because we know what we're looking at here. And we can even, if we want, just add a very specific annotation to this singular point that we're looking at. So this was one sec as it's thinking. So for an annotation, this is for a very specific point that you're looking at. You can write your own text, or you can use the underlying data to build something that you want. So in this case, I don't want to have to guess what this is. I want the application to do its work. So I'm going to use some of the fields in the title, and I'm going to use the, let's just say, energy description. And I can do the same thing in the description, or I can, if I want, I can add an image or use the fields again. So here again, I'll just use the fields, and I'll add an image later on to something that I find. So you see here, the energy description stays in the same spot. You can pan around, and it'll always be in the same spot. So the only one thing you can't do is you can't really change the size of this, and you can't really change the position of it. So you kind of have to deal with where it puts it. So Pacific Northwest, that looks good. Let's add that, and let's go on to the next region. So I'm going to zoom out, and let's look at our familiar south region. So you can see here, a lot of natural gas. Texas, of course, natural gas. Everywhere you have wells. So let's zoom in on this one here. This one looks pretty big in Harris. So let's go ahead, add an annotation, and here we'll just say Harris. And let's go ahead and add an image to this. Here's an image that I found on the internet. And there we go. So the same way the annotation works. It stays about the same size, and it'll always be there. So zoom in a little bit back to where we were. Let's change this to the south. And let's go to the next region. Okay, look at that. We have a bunch of purple here. I wonder what that is. Can anyone guess what purple is up in the northeast? Coal? If everyone said coal, they are correct. So a bunch of coal in the northeast. So let's change that. Call this coal. And the same thing. We can add an annotation, text box, whatever we want here. So same thing here. We'll go and let's do that. That'll work very well. Okay. So you get the idea. Very easy, very intuitive. Any questions so far around what I'm doing? Okay, so let's take a look at one that's finished and how that looks. So go ahead and X out of this. So go back, launch PowerMap, and this is one that is fully built out. And let me get it onto that screen. So once you're happy with how everything looks, you can go ahead and play tour. And this is how you would need a presentation. You would have this playing in the background, and you would talk to it and say, here's what energy capacity looks like by county. Give it a few seconds. It'll slowly transition to each individual segment that you looked at. So it's very fluid. Shows your legend, shows all of that. And let's say somebody in the audience had a question. Well, what is that in Florida? Well, you can just stop it and start exploring, start figuring out what this is. Like, okay, that's Florida. They have a bunch of natural gas there too. That's an interesting insight that you may have not known before. And once you're done with that, go ahead and hit play and continue where you left off. So that's what a finished product can look like if you spend the time on it. Let's go ahead and jump into a different data set. So let's look at the food inspection. So this is also a data set that was pulled off the internet. So up in Seattle, they keep track of their food inspection pass and fail rates. What kind of violations were they? What kind of other information they have around. So location. So in this case, instead of an address, we are using a latitude and longitude. So that'll much faster geocode in your data set. So let's go ahead and hit map again. And let's start a new tour. Alright, so same thing again. It starts off to your data set where your data exists, so you don't have to automatically zoom into it. And it says, okay, what do we want to use for the geography here? We have an address, we have a city, we have latitude and longitude, and here in your little picker, you have an option that you want to go to. So in this case, we'll do latitude and longitude. So even though it only selects one of them, it's actually going to use both because obviously 1 point is not enough to figure out how it looks on a map. So let's hit next. And let's zoom in a little more. Okay, so this is Seattle. Let's get rid of this to get a little bit more space. Okay, so right now we're just looking at all the points on the map, all the addresses. We can zoom in as much as we want. And let's actually look at number of total violations that they have. So this will help us draw a better picture. So let's do violation points. So automatically it goes into the heights. And you can see here that there's a lot of violations in clustered areas. So this is the the downtown area. We have a point here. Not a whole lot of stuff going on here on Mercer Island, and a couple other clusters out here. So let's try to figure out what's really going on here. So I like what I'm looking at here. Let's add this as a scene. And this will be added in the background because I chose to get rid of that sidebar so I can see a little bit more. Now let's see what kind of violations we're looking at. So we're going to take violation type, add that into a category. Actually, I want to do violation description, sorry. So obviously more data points here. Let's throw that legend back on there. And same kind of story. We have a lot of, you know, that's not the right one. We want to do name. There we go. So, types of violations that we have and their location. So, we have violations here, and let's try to figure out how they're actually spaced out. So let's capture that scene, and let's maybe do this a little differently. Instead of looking at it by address, let's do it by what we had by zip code. So I like how that first two scenes look. Let's go ahead and change the way we're looking at it and say, you know what, let's do zip code now. So go ahead, hit next, and we see here it does points for each of the zip codes that we have. So let me just remove this temporarily. So each of these points is a zip code on our map, but obviously a column doesn't do a very good job of representing what that really is. So let's change that chart type to a region. And here we go. We have all of the zip codes in the Seattle area.
What does the layer do?
So the layer is, it's like an onion, just build different layers. So right now we're looking at layer 1. And if I wanted to keep this layer of zip codes, which I'll do, so let's go ahead and call this zips. And let's add a new layer. So what this does is it asks me how I want to geocode that data. So same thing, I'm going to choose, instead of zip codes, I'm going to do something more specific. I'm going to go back to my addresses, hit next. I'm going to call this address. And now I have two separate layers of my data. So I can build a better story. So I have a bunch of these zip codes, and I see that my data doesn't do a very good job of capturing stuff in this outer set of zip codes. It's mainly focused on these inner zip codes here. So let's do a column chart. Let's do violations again. So you can also drag, you don't have to click, so you can tell where you want it to go. Let's get rid of this. And it's a little kind of hard to see, so let me go into settings here, and you can change how it's visualized. So I'm going to change the thickness of my chart here. So I'm going to make it a little skinnier, just to make it a little bit easier to read for me. And maybe just a little bit taller so I can see the outliers a little better. I'm not happy with this color that they automatically chose for me. I'm not a huge fan of this green, kind of makes me want to throw up, so let's do something a little more pleasant. Blue's all right, let's do red. Okay. So I'm using a sum, but if you want, you could use a different kind of value. In this case, a summation makes the most sense, but if in your data set it makes sense to use a max or a count or an average, then you can very easily do that. So I'm going to stick with sum over here because in this case, like I said, it makes the most sense. So let's try to focus on this downtown area. What's really going on here? Try to capture that, and let's try to figure out what really is going on here and why do they have so many violations. Let's see, what would we like to see this by? Let's do violation type. So what kind of violation types do we have? Blue and red. Well, that's not very helpful.
Is there a way to filter it, you know? I mean, you have like violation description, I mean, what if you only wanted certain violation descriptions to show up?
That is a functionality that they are working on, because yeah, obviously we're looking at a bunch of data, and let's say that I want to look at this one specific zip code. I can do that by going back to my Excel sheet and filtering it over there, and then refreshing here, but there is no way to actively filter within PowerMap. Because that would be a great piece of functionality to say, well, let me look at something very specific, and all this extra stuff is just really too busy, and it just doesn't provide any good information. So unfortunately, right at the time, no. But obviously, they are making improvements to the tool. So let's see, what else could we look at this by? Let's look at inspection type for category. That's a little different story. Okay. So, routine inspections. Let's try to focus on routine inspections. What do we have here? So, let's do the inspection type and the description. We will do the address. So, pretty easy to annotate your data. Add a scene. So, we can see from here. Let's get rid of, we don't need to see this anymore. We can see that there's obviously a huge cluster here in downtown just because there's a large cluster of restaurants and facilities in this region. So that's a pretty interesting story, and you can try to maybe figure out why there are so many failures, why are there so many food inspections in that region. So let's see how this would look as a finished product. So as I said, it took me about 5-10 minutes to build that together, but if I were to spend 30 minutes to an hour, you could build a very nice and compelling story. Let's go ahead and play this and see what this really looks like. So we're looking at, obviously, all the restaurants in the Seattle metro area. Doing some panning here. So here it's doing a nice glide in circle, showing all the addresses. And now, okay, we're going to focus on this one, which is the Washington State Football Stadium. So they have a lot of people there, so you may not want to eat there. That's what the map's telling you. So Microsoft, they have a huge campus, obviously, in Seattle. They have some violations, not a whole lot as compared to the other places. You can do these 2D charts. So you can see comparatively how all your data looks on the map, because sometimes not all the data makes the most sense on a 3D chart, so let's go back to how that looked. So I can easily jump back and forward. Actually, let's just jump out completely.
So what are you doing to transition in between the layers?
It's happening automatically. I mean, you are building it. So in this case, each of these numbers on the left, this is a separate scene. And it remembers what view you're looking at. So here, I'm looking really far zoomed out. Here I'm more zoomed in, but based on this transition, it's going to do a very stationary, very smooth transition into what I'm looking at here. So
does it give you a set time on each layer, or?
Yes. So you have a scene duration up here at the top.
Okay.
So 6 seconds. Let's say this isn't important. Let's make this 1 second. Let's make this 1 second as well. And let's change the transition from instead of pushing, let's do a figure eight here. Let's do something else here. Let's do a flyover. And obviously, transition duration, we don't want that to be longer than the actual scene because that just doesn't make sense. See how that looks, starting from the very beginning. Very quick, you can see immediate change. This may not be the right duration for us, but you can very easily play around with it and see what makes the most sense. Jump around with it. So let's look at this 2D chart.
Can you show us the difference between scene in a layer? I mean, is a layer, you get multiple layers on one scene? Is that it?
So a scene is just a snapshot within your story.
Okay.
You can have as many scenes as you want. Layers, the same thing, you can have as many of them as you want, but think of a layer as a separate data set. So here we're looking at a regional layer, and if I want to go back and add a layer, and what that does is it's the same data set, but it's going to be visualized differently in that same scene. So instead of visualizing it by region, I'm going to visualize it by, instead of doing it by point, which we've done before, let's do the heat map, which we haven't done yet. So you can see that things are clustering in this one specific region. Does that make sense? Okay. So back to our 2D chart. So we have our typical legend, but if we want to see all of the points on our map to easily figure out where our outliers are, it'll let us choose which layer we want to focus on. So in this case, we'll focus on the food inspection one. Go ahead and do insert. And all right, what do we want to do here? We want to look at the top 100 locations. So again, we're looking at all the data here. So it can be a lot to look at. So be cognizant of how much data you have. Yeah, I think top 100 makes the most sense. By blue, let's do by red. So this is a violation type. So you can see, okay, this one zip code here, 98104, has over 50,000 blue violations. So you can build a story, and blue doesn't mean a whole lot to me and you, but to a food inspector it probably means a good amount. So if we continue our tour, so it will jump back to the very beginning. You can jump around. We have that 2D map, and it remembers exactly what we did before. So we changed it to include a second layer and the heat map. So let's say you're done building your tour or your story, and what do you want to do? You want to share that story with somebody. So you go to File Options. Actually, no, that's not right. We want to create a video. So what it's going to do here is it's going to render and export it for you. So in this case, let's just do something low res so it does it a little faster. We're going to save it, okay. Save it to my desktop. Obviously this takes about as long as the video takes itself. So we don't need to sit here and do that. You can take my word for it. But if you don't want to share it as a video, you can also just do a capture screen here. So hit capture, that just saves a screenshot of what you're looking at, and you can save that into an email, send it to somebody, so forth. Any questions? Okay.
So this heat data set in longitude and latitude level?
You need some kind of geolocation data. So that could be latitude and longitude, which will give you the best granularity of data. You can go an address, so number on the street, city, state, or zip. So
okay, so if you have an address, this can convert. You don't need a longitude, latitude.
no. So let's go back to the beginning here. I can choose how I want to geo-encode my data. So let's say I want to do it by address and street. I hit next, and what happens in the background here, you can see it's processing. It went out to Bing services, sent all those addresses for free, so it's going to Bing services and returning latitude and longitude. So that's a pretty nice feature that you don't have to pay to use Bing services, because normally a license costs X amount of dollars.
What about just the feature in general? Is this just part of Excel from now on, or is this like some...
So we're looking at the preview build right now. It's a feature of Office 365 Plus. So that's a subscription-based feature of Office. It's online, but it's a perpetual license that you have to purchase as an organization. But if you yourself want to get this and play around with this, you can find the preview build out there. It was released in September of last year. They won't be updating it anymore, but they haven't set a expiration date on it either. But they plan to, in this coming year, to return a standalone version of this within Excel, similar to how PowerView and PowerPivot were in 2007. You have to download a separate column and do the install and all of that. But now, if I go back to Excel, so this is just standard. PowerView is standard within Excel 2013. Their idea is within the next rev of Excel that PowerMap will be included. They still haven't figured out what the best method is if we want to keep it everything within the Power BI sites. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Power BI, but you do everything within a SharePoint-like site. So you do your analytics, store your worksheets up there, share and collaborate. But they haven't converted PowerMap yet into HTML5 where it works within the web. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I'm just a little worried. I mean, it looks great. It's an on-premise solution, but it's still previewed. And kind of what I'm hearing with like the cloud first sort of direction for Microsoft is just going to get to be a Power BI only, online only.
They realize that not everyone's going to go the Power BI route. Not everyone wants to do cloud, but they are trying to push things into that direction just because they think it's a better offering.
And cloud first does not mean cloud only.
Yeah. Cloud first.
I hope that, but I'm just saying. I'm hearing a lot of push for Power BI. Just came from a session here with Brian Smith, and the tone I got there was, this stuff. A lot of the stuff is going to be Power BI only. That's the tone.
Well, but Power BI doesn't mean cloud only. As we build new releases, those will be put into the new releases.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a matter of time, and people will get their hands on this because it is a good tool. It does provide good insights into your data. You could very easily find relationships that you wouldn't be able to find just by having your data within SQL. I mean, you can build SQL reports with data capabilities, but it's not as interactive as tools like this.
Merrick, I have a question. I'm just kind of curious to poll the audience after you've seen this. How many of you are going to go back to your office on Monday and tell your users about this?
Just one person? Who thinks that they could actually use this at work? No, this is to anyone. Anyone who do you deal with data at work?
Yeah, but not, I mean, are you talking the map, the geographic?
Yeah, just do you have geospatial data?
No,
Okay.
not really. No, we're not.
I mean, I think my company would benefit a lot from something like this because we build all of our reporting manually, with HTML5 and all these different other types of technologies. But I think something like this would be great for, because we offer reporting to our clients that this kind of thing would be, it would pop for them. This would be really cool for them.
So just talking, you could use it for traffic accidents at intersections,
Exactly. Yeah, you could see which intersections have the most traffic accidents.
Yeah.
And you may be able to figure that out with SQL doing some ranks and order buys, but it pops more on a map.
Eric, my other question is the data sets that you're working with seem relatively small, and part of this event today is kind of big data. So can you combine information from different sources and still map it?
Yes, so I am working in Excel, and all I did here was I just loaded data into this Excel sheet. But if I wanted to use PowerPivot or whatever other source and get a larger data set, I could load that in here. But then, like any other solution, it's a hardware problem. Do you have the hardware to support millions of rows of data? Do you have a ton of RAM? The answer is yes, you can do it, but you just need the hardware to do it. So in this example, we're looking at, it's not a whole lot of data, it's 17,000 records, but you can do more, but just realize if you're going to geocode a bunch of data, that also takes time. So you can do about 10,000 records a second on Bing services, otherwise it's going to start throttling you. So if you have 1 million records without a latitude and longitude, it's going to take a while. So just be cognizant of that as well.
So this can't be launched through SharePoint yet, correct?
Correct. It is a built-in functionality into Excel. They plan on, once they convert it to HTML5, they will throw it into Power BI and have it within SharePoint or a Power BI site.
The only reason we asked the question, my answer would have been yes, except I learned about it a couple weeks ago. I've already went to it and told me how cool it is. The issue is, the people I see using this most are going to be like over it's either internal or external sales. This is very powerful. It's a presentation tool, right? I mean, that's what it really boils down to. Let me show the data to someone who's not an analyst. And the problem with that is most of our sales force doesn't have a computer that can handle this. Not at the scale we want to use it on. And so we have to have some way to launch it to a server with like 100 gigs of RAM so they can load our data set. And there's also the fact that there's not a ton of customization. More people want to build branded.
You have to put it on the cloud.
So I saw a hand in the back a few seconds ago. Did you have a question?
No, I'm good. But actually, I'll ask it anyway. As opposed to what? There's tons of mapping software out there. Why do I need this mapping software?
It comes with your Microsoft BI stack. You don't have to pay extra for it. That's really the benefit of most of these Microsoft tools, is that they come with what you already have. You don't have to pay the extra. Let's say, yes, you can do this in Tableau, but a Tableau individual license costs $2,000. That's for one person. And if you want a Tableau server, that's $50,000 or more for a server. So the costs.
Is it? I don't know if this is the right word. I'm not technical, so don't laugh at my question to all of you smart people. Is this portable? I work for AT&T, and we have just about everything we do is lat long. It's a network, right? And so we're heavily invested in some really awesome mapping tools. I can push some interactive PDFs out of our mapping data, ship a PDF to someone, and they open it, and it does the map layers, similar to what you've just done, but it's outside of the application where the data sits. Is that possible with something?
Yes, so like I showed, you can export a video, you can take screenshots and all of that. You can't create PDFs like maybe your ArcGIS tool is doing, but let's talk more after this, because I have some questions for you as well. Anyone else have any questions?
So does this have like a dynamic range input? Because I think if you're going from the SQL server, and I have a lot of stuff where it imports in CSV files, and that might be, the length and the range can change on it. I mean, is this just one of those where you can just like select the whole columns and it just brings in what you need, or?
So build your Power Pivot model from your various sources, hit refresh, and it'll pull in your new data, right? This will feed off that data as well. So just build a view of that Power Pivot model, hit refresh, and it'll automatically update in the background.
So in other words, it uses the data model back in.
Yeah, it uses the data model, exactly.
Does it have to use the data model, or are you just using the sheet here?
I'm just using the sheet.
Okay.
Because I mean, that's a kind of a big deal, because right now, I mean, I guess Power Pivot doesn't have any way to automatically refresh. If it's just in Excel.
Well, it does. I'm pretty sure you can put it on the schedule.
SharePoint.
In SharePoint,
In SharePoint.
not in Excel.
Okay.
You have to do a manual refresh in Excel.
And then this doesn't support SharePoint yet, so could you pull this, have this in your desktop and still connect to a hosted Power Pivot model so that it was still refreshing? Or that?
Yes, we did that at a couple of clients where we built a Power Pivot model off of a larger big data set. We were actually using meter data. So we loaded, and I think one of the guys in the back can correct me if I'm wrong, it was around 4 billion records of data into a SQL Azure model, built a Power Pivot model on that, and we built reports off of that. So we had a lot of our data in the cloud being crunched and all that, and then locally we built reports on our desktops from that Power Pivot model. So it all depends on how your data is architected, where it is, how much of it you have, so forth.
How detailed are the maps outside of the U.S.? I may have an application for that for, let's say, the city of Brussels, Belgium.
So we can jump in and I can show you, but it uses Bing services, which is anything. I mean, it's like Google Maps. It'll have whatever you want. So let's go ahead and zoom out. Let's see. Let's go to. Let's slowly refresh if my internet is still working. So my internet may have crapped out on me, but you can map wherever in the world you want to map. So so what kind of solution would you be building? And would you use this tool to explore some data?
Do you bring in the satellite views or just the maps?
So let's go ahead and change the theme, and the second one here is the satellite. And it looks like my...
That's really far away, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. I believe my internet just may have flicked out. But yes, you can load the... Yeah. It looks like it's ready for cookies, so... Downstairs, they just set out some cookies, so you can go down and get some, but if you guys have any more questions, I'll be here, and I'll be here to answer them. So thank you for coming.